Hello everyone, my name is Dmitry, as been said, and today we'll talk about stress. If you're looking for stress testing, it's not about that. It's the overall how we're gonna cope with stress in a daily life. And with that, I always like to establish the goals for my talk, what we're actually trying to achieve with this presentation. And the goals are fairly straightforward. With anything, I always like to establish and make it very clear what the problem is. So we'll talk about stress in length to some extent, so we understand what the problem is in the first place. Then I'd like to introduce to you a couple of practices. Honestly, this talk is quite broad in a sense that I'm covering quite a few major areas that usually require a talk of their own. But with this talk, because it covers so many different areas of life, I hope that each and every one of you will find at least something that they can improve their daily routine and bring home one of these practices. And I always like to close up my talks by hopefully establishing a way to actually get those practices to stick. Not just to hear about them and never ever use them. Hopefully you find the ways to implement them and keep going with them forward. So, stress. Why do we even need to talk about it in the first place? What's the problem with stress? And it's always best to just look externally because we don't like to look internally. And if you were to consider stress outside of yourselves, there have been so many stories about stress. I think I've read this story when I was joining electronic arts. This is a famous electronic arts spouse story about her husband who worked overtime, and it's just a common story with game industry in the first place. This article is dated way back, 2004. Feels like ages now. If you look at another story from the Rockstar employees, it's been 2010, but still the same problem. People overwork, they feel stress, don't spend enough time with their families. The work-life balance just non-existent. And the most recent one, if you know about Telltales, it's basically the company. I'm not sure if you've seen the game. It's Walking Dead was one of their famous ones, where you can basically, it's a quest where you can choose your own adventure kind of style. But basically, what in this tweet Brandon mentioned is fairly obvious to all of us when something really happens. But ultimately, he highlights the problem with stress at work and overwork, and it's not just all about your employer. Ultimately, it's about you and your health. So there are so many more cases, especially externally. I have like a huge list. I just found my favorite three ones. But if I were to look internally, we can always find something in ourselves. And if you even ask your colleagues, your family, or even yourself, I'm sure you'll find some experience with stress. And I feel like it's slide 14. By this slide, we kind of already connected, so I'll share my story. So it was fall 2015. At that time, I was immigrating to Canada. I was working and studying full-time. It was quite intense. And one day in the evening in the fall, I felt something felt a bit off. I'm overall quite healthy, I would say. I'm blessed with that, but that evening I felt that I was like going to cook my dinner, and I felt like my left hand went numb. I was like, okay, that's weird. But then I felt it again, it was fine. I walked a bit further, and I felt like my left leg went numb. I was like, that's also weird. Let's turn off the stove, because that's the first thought in my head. Let's actually not spoil the dinner. And then, after a few minutes, my leg started feeling again, and after a while, my entire left side felt numb. That was kind of scary. Knowing my age, I was like in my 20s. Knowing my age, I felt that doesn't sound right either. So I tried to call the ambulance. And it was so bad that I couldn't even pronounce the address that I was living in at the moment, because my left side of the face was numb as well. So it was really kind of not the best experience. Ultimately, I ended up here, in an emergency place. And what the doctor said, I didn't have a heart attack or anything like that. It was a panic attack, a very severe one, because of overwork. Fortunately enough, I took care of it. I went to the doctor. We discussed how to tend to it, and that overwork is not the best thing. And this unwanted experience was actually quite good for me. I would say it was fairly beneficial. The reason why I'm saying it was beneficial is because it became my motivator. And for all of us to make some changes in life, we usually have to have those motivators of some kind. And those motivators, we can outline a couple of them that usually applies to most of us. The first and foremost will be fear. Fear for your life, even if it's something like a panic attack, which is not going to affect you as much, or fear of, something like life-changing happen, changing purpose in life. Sometimes, birth of your kid really changes your perspective or something else happens, and you basically reevaluate your life and reflect on what happened. The religion sometimes helps people to motivate themselves, but it's a very core of the religion is community. Community is also a great way to motivate you, because when you work with someone on your own flaws or in ways to improve, it motivates you. There is a reason why we actually strive to be in a group. Even in a conference, you are in a group of your peers. So I hope that those motivators, some of them at least apply to you, and you can find something that would motivate you going forward. Definitely among those four, a couple definitely impacted me, as I've mentioned. So with motivators in mind, what do we do next? So we identified the problem. The important thing to mention with stress, though, and ask yourself, is all stress bad? And I would say definitely no. Not all stress is bad. Because nature is smart. There is nothing in our body that actually would be there unless nature found it useless. Even the appendix being found, there are some theories going on that it might be useful as well. Nature is smart. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the purposes of stress actually do exist. So even those, common phrases, fight and flight responses, and how we react. Think of yourself many years ago when, we were like, if you meet a predator in the woods, you would basically have fight or flight response. Would you fight the predator or not? There was a story in Colorado recently where the guy fought puma and basically strangled it. That guy had a fight response, which is unusual for me, but, I would definitely try to flee. That being said, the stress, basically, adrenaline and noradrenaline would invoke those responses. Sleep, the way we deal with stress in terms of the sleep and the sleep deprivation actually makes sense as well. When you had to trail an animal for longer periods of time, you can't just, okay, I'll just take a nap, puma or whoever I'm trailing, just wait for me for a bit. You can't say that. So the nature basically made sure we can sustain that short-term stress. And hunger, when we have immense amounts of food, we can actually store some energy for further when we might experience hunger because we were unsuccessful in finding some food. So again, it all comes from the nature in the sense that if stress wasn't useful, we wouldn't even feel it. So, but if stress makes sense, you might ask yourself, why do I feel so bad every so often? Why do I feel sleep deprived, overworked, burned out? Why do I have those feelings in the first place? And it's a good question to ask because it brings us to the idea of, again, stress not being equal. There are different types of stress, and there are two main ones that I'd like to highlight. The first one is a short-term stress, or so-called acute types of stress. For example, if you go to sauna, so-called a shock stress, where it's actually good for you because that short-term stress invokes the mitochondria activity that it helps to regulate your energy in your body overall. That short-term stress is actually good for you, but the long-term stress is something you need to avoid because if you are being food deprived for a long time, being hungry, you're going to actually die eventually. But if you're hungry every so often, it's been shown that intermittent fasting, as it's been called, can be beneficial. So it's a long-term that make sure that it makes your body to break down, and you have to avoid that. And again, to reiterate that, to make a conclusion here, is that you need to incorporate short-term stress into your life. Don't try to remove that completely. But you need to try to eliminate the long-term stress of overwork, deprivation of sleep, poor food habits, and so on. And so, of course, it's easy to say that, and we probably heard it many, many times, but to make that actually stick, there is a good practice, the good practice of divide and conquer. So with that, I'd like to introduce four main areas or grounds for stress that we have. Again, it's the sleep, it's your nutrition, it's your fitness, mental and physical, and last but not least is work. They probably all experience, unless you really like it and you don't work anymore. So, I don't want to be negative here. Instead of calling it grounds for stress, let's be positive and call it grounds for anti-stress, in the sense that it's a good opportunity for us to improve our lives and not just basically blame it to be the worst thing in the world. So, with that, let's actually look at the sleep a bit closer. So, why do we even sleep in the first place? If you're actually asking that question, I really pity you. I hope that most of us love sleeping. I still remember those times when I was very young and I was like, I hate napping. I would love to nap now. So the reasons for sleep, to just summarize a couple of them, sleep really helps you to deal with depression. It's been shown from the many studies that when you sleep, you relax, and it really, if you ever experience, like maybe if you went to school or even at work, when you sleep deprived for longer periods of time, you end up with a high level of depression. Some diseases, especially very bad ones like the mental ones, Alzheimer's disease, has actually been linked to the sleep deprivation, especially for longer periods of time. And if you sleep properly, you will be able to lower the risk of those diseases as much as possible. Your creativity is really going up when you sleep because you can actually concentrate and focus on things. And again, your memory will be boosted because when you sleep, it's been shown that one of the stages of sleep will basically flash your memory. There is a reason why we say sleep in this problem, because you can think of it, you can memorize it, and so on. So there is a reason for all those phrases that we have and wisdom that we have from the past. If you still need convincing to sleep, there is a great book by Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. I've listened to the audiobook. It's quite lengthy, but it will convince you, whoever you are, a parent, a business person, it will convince you to make sure that you prioritize sleep in your daily routine. So it's all great and stuff, and we kind of now know why we sleep, but the good question is to ask how we sleep in the first place. And to pass to healthy sleep, it's quite nice. First and foremost, try to remove light and noise pollution. Have a sleeping mask, have the earplugs, really remove if you're really hardcore, there is a thing called Felix Gray glasses. You basically can walk in them outside, it eliminates all blue light. It's too hardcore for me, but I always suggest to implement like night shift on your phone, or in your laptop you can have a red shift which will dim the lights on your laptop and other devices. That's important for your sleeping cycles. Try to control your environment. Have a clean sheets. Don't just sleep in a nasty bed, because it actually affects the way you sleep. It's been, again, from the books I've referenced, they describe it in length as well. It's all about those 8 hours uninterrupted sleeps. People debate over that, whether it's all about circadian cycles. Ultimately, it's all about just having uninterrupted, nice, prolonged sleep, and it will help you. Things happen, especially if you have kids. You might not, end up sleeping as much as you want, but try to maintain the constant wake time. That's an important factor. To give the reference, I wanted to add something new to my talk because I flew here from North America. This is me flying. I was kind of sleepy, but you can see I'm fully prepared. No kid would ever disturb me on a plane, because I have basically that. I have that. It's noise canceling earmuffs. This wire goes to my Brain FM app that just has like a nice noise. Travel rest, awesome pillow, and of course polar bear eye mask. Everything is awesome. I'm telling you, no kid would ever disturb me sleeping. So always think about your sleep, even if you travel a lot. And book-wise, there is a great book, Sleep, by Nick Littlehales. He's an elite sports sleep coach, an awesome title, I would say. He used to I believe he used to be a coach like of a London cycling team and a bunch of other ones. So, nutrition is not any less important. Of course, there is a phrase we all have heard, you are what you eat, and it's definitely true. So, just I'm not a nutritionist or anything, but there are just some common, wisdoms that I've learned from the experience and what people taught me as well. Diets, I don't believe in those, honestly. They never work. It's something called, most of the time, yo-yo diet. It's not reference to the hip-hop or anything. It's more of a toy, yo-yo, when it's been shown that people after, I think, 15 years, about 90% of them who were on diet would eat their way back and then some. So if you try to just stick to the diet, it would not work long-term, most likely. So try to just have a moderation when you eat. That's the way to go. Just eat less or eat proper. But again, experiment. Not everything works for everyone. And talk to the professional and find what might work for you. That's important. Don't just jump on a keto, paleo, or whatever it is. Just try what works for you. But overall, just minimize the amount of sugar, processed food. It really helps. You're going to lose weight if you just cut down on sugar. And increase the amounts of greens you eat. I had a hard time with greens. So what I've done is I bought a mixer, Magic Bullet. Not a promo, but it's basically you can mix whatever broccoli, whatever you like, you can actually drink that smoothie and it will be fine. And then you're used to greens. It's just my hustle with a green from childhood. So if you want to increase the amount of veggies you eat, that's the way to go. So, but overall, the key to food control, because I said eat in moderation, it's easier said, but the intermittent fasting really helps with that. And what that thing is, it's basically something famous people say, 16-8 model. In other words, it's basically when you eat in a certain period of time, period of 8 hours, and you don't eat in between for like 16 hours. Some people eat like from noon to 8 p.m. or from 1 o'clock to 9 p.m., whatever works for you for your schedule. The thing about intermittent fasting is that you don't have that stuff feeling. If you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, you actually don't feel hungry anymore whatsoever. And hunger is an important feeling. You feel stuffed all the time, and it's not a good feeling. And the most important is that some of the longevity studies actually showed this thing works. But overall, those studies aside, and whether they've been made on mice or on people, that's being said, the most important thing for me, I felt, it helps you to take control of your of your habits when it comes to food. Nutrition-wise podcast suggestions, I suggest Ben Greenfield. He talks a lot about food and the nutrition practices. The Model Health Show. The name of the podcast is not my favorite. Sounds quite pretentious. That being said, it's a nice podcast. They have a nice nutritionist on the podcast you can listen to. And the Human Optimization Hour, also a good podcast, if you're really interested about health. So again, you've heard that before, I hope. And it all sounds easy. But again, it's difficult to implement. You've read many of those self-help books, blogs, and so on, but nothing works, nothing sticks. The key to improving yourself is basically tricking the habits that you already have, because the habits is the way to go. And overall, the habits are what drive our daily routines, and our days are consist of daily routines themselves. So if you were to basically use the rules for all habits, because the rules are always the same, there are 3 parts to any habit that you have. There is something called a habit loop, where basically you have a cue or a trigger, you have the routine, and then you have the reward. And the cycle just keeps going. I try to make it a loop. I'm bad at drawing, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. But that's supposed to be a loop. So the trick here is that you try to use the existing cue, the existing reward, but replace your routine. The book I've read, good example about the habit loop was, there was a lady who had a hard time because she was chewing her nails like intensely, to the point where you can't sustain that. And she went to her therapist, and they basically went through this habits loop. And what they determined that her trigger was she felt a pressure in her nails, in her fingers. And to remove the pressure, the routine, she started biting her nails. And the reward was she didn't have the pressure in her fingers anymore. So what they've done is, every time she felt that trigger of feeling the pressure in her fingers, she replaced the routine. Instead of chewing her nails, she sat on her hands. It might sound bizarre to you, but the reward still stayed the same, because she felt the removal of that pressure in her fingers ultimately, and she was able to replace her habit of chewing with just sitting on the hands, which is much better, I would say. So that's how you basically change your habits, is by not just completely tricking or making yourself suffer. Try to use your body, because again, as I've said, nature is not dumb. It's smart. It knows how to maintain and keep your body going. So if you're ready for a change overall, I know it seems a lot, but there is a thing called Keystone Habits. And we're going to talk about Keystone Habits throughout today's talk. And basically the thing is, if you stick to it, to that Keystone habit, it will change your behavior overall. If you go for a jog in the morning, you would have that so-called a small win, even if it's just 1 mile or a couple meters. If you started your day with that small, tiny win, your entire day will change and evolve, because you will have that, I'm great, I'm good, I've done something today, I've done something positive for myself. With that, it will have a ripple effect on your entire day in your life, and it gives you that extra push to make difference in your daily routines. And if you want to hear more, this is again another great book about the power of habits. Also available on Audible. I use lots of audiobooks, and they're great. So, nutrition. That's been a big 2 topics, but the fitness itself, especially mental and physical. And we're going to talk about both of them. And we'll start with kind of an easier one, the physical fitness talk. And when it comes to physical fitness, it's a keystone habit for the most part, because again, the body is just a machine. You have to maintain it. Otherwise, you're going to have a difficulty doing any other activities that you might have. It requires variations. It needs some integration in your life, and it gives you some flexibility. And let me talk about those 4 a bit more details. When it comes to the keystone habits, fitness as a habit, if I were to consider that from this perspective. You need to identify your triggers. Some people, what they like to do a day before, and it's always great to do something a day before, preparation for the next day. Prepare your clothes, as simple as that. That's a good trigger in the morning where you already have, your bag prepared for your running shoes. It will change the way you see things when it comes to you starting a new day. Establish a reward. There is a problem sometimes with working out that people sometimes overeat themselves because they feel like, oh, I already exercise, I can eat as much as I want. Don't think of that reward. Think of something different. I don't know, go for a smoothie or watch a movie, Netflix and chill, whatever you like to do. So establish a reward of some sort. Because again, don't forget about the loop. And have a goal. Some people like to sign up for a marathon or some short run or whatever it would be, but be realistic here. Don't extend yourself either. And find a community. Find people who you want to exercise with. That's always great. Go for a class or something. And gamification and exercising is an important addition to your daily life. There is a great app called Strava. If you don't have anyone around who uses Strava, you can actually work with people around the globe who use Strava. I use Strava a lot. It's great for running, for walking, for anything you do. My Zone Tracker is a bit more expensive. It tracks your points and gamifies your workout as well, and maybe some other variables that you might want to use. But Strava so far is my favorite. So in terms of the variation in physical fitness, try to use and integrate some acute stress. Don't just go for a workout all the time. Go for a sauna. Go for the cryotherapy. Do something interesting with with your workout. Don't just constantly do strength exercises. Have some acute stress. It's good for you. The heat shock has been proven to have some benefit, especially after 20 minutes in sauna. Anyways, that's the details. Vary your cardio. Don't just simply run every day. It might be bad for your knees, and know what kind of areas you're running on. I know some professionals might argue with that, but that being said, unless you're a professional runner, you're just doing it for your cardio. Try to vary it a bit. Don't just go for a jog. Maybe go for a bike ride. Go for a swim. Do some variations. And change the focus. If you do upper body, lower body, don't just do the entire complex. It's all about be basically balanced. And try to incorporate yoga. Yoga is awesome. I've showed you intermittent fasting cycles because 1 to 9 is because I moved my yoga class from 12 to 1. That's yoga is great because it's active recovery, it's called. If you don't want to exercise every day, and you shouldn't, the yoga will provide you basically that exercising while recovering from your strength and conditioning. So when it comes to the integration of your fitness routines, what's important is an active commute. Don't just constantly drive to your work. And I know sometimes you can't say that I have to drive, but if you're lucky enough to live in the, not too far away, you might bike, you might walk, run, or try to walk part of the way, then take a train. Try to accumulate that active commute. Mark in your calendar time for the exercising because it's as important as any other meeting. I have a block on my calendar for my exercises midday because otherwise you will skip it because it's not as important, and it is. Desk type rotation. Don't just have that phrase where standing is a new smoking, sitting is a new smoking. Yeah, sitting is a new smoking. That just doesn't work. Standing is also bad for you for longer periods. Try to rotate. Have a standing desk, sitting desk, have a fitness ball, have a treadmill desk. So many different options, but don't just stick to one option. Do the rotation, it's best for you. And have a boredom plan. The boredom plan is tricky. If you try to track when you stand up and go for a snack, and just mark it on your calendar, you might find that around 12 to 1, you always get a snack. And it's usually not good for you because the snack's usually some sugary, whatever it will be. So what you do then is that you try to figure out what was the trigger for that snack walk. It most likely is boredom. So what you do, you replace your routine and go for a walk. You discuss with your buddies, let's go for a walk at 12 o'clock. And you basically replace that routine, have the reward, removing the boredom, have the trigger of the boredom, and you basically improve yourself. So think of that. The boredom plan is an important thing. And last but not least, the flexibility of the workout. Have the morning routine. What do you do in the morning? If you do some exercising, even the minor ones, it will help you out. Again, that idea of small wins. If you travel a lot for your work, try to, as soon as you get to the hotel, drop your stuff, go to the gym. It will help you remove the jet lags as well, and it's really beneficial for you. Do body weight exercises. Don't just go to the gym and look for the gym. Go for a run, go some push-ups, do some push-ups, whatever it would be, if you can. So don't just look for the gym or complain that you don't have one. And active sightseeing. There are especially in Europe, you have so many free walking tours. Choose a walking tour. They are great. They are like multi-kilometer walks where you can explore the city and also, go for a walk. Some people I know put the running shoes on and go to explore. I do that every so often, unless it's cold. So, mental fitness. Mental fitness is not any less important. Because that being said, when it comes to mindfulness overall, there are 4 main things. I know mindfulness sounds kind of, tricky these days because you can imagine like 2 CEOs in a startup sitting together and talk about mindfulness. It's not that. I'll try to give you actual ideas here. So there are 4 main things of clearing your mind, controlling your emotions, embracing your solitude, and incorporating meditation and how to basically work with them. So to talk about them in more details, clearing your mind. We live today in information overload. Because, again, we have Twitter, we have Hacker News, whatever you use for your curated news. So much information. I'm also susceptible to like reading just a headline, and it's never enough. So you have to be cautious of that and be able to trim that down a bit. Information dump is also not a great idea, in a sense that when you go home and you have lots of ideas in your head, the best thing to do is actually write it down, but write it down in a single source of truth. Have an app of some sort. Don't have hundreds of notebooks throughout your house writing to-dos for the next day. Have a single place or an app on your phone, and then basically unload all your information on that paper or whatever you prefer to use. But don't just have it in your head and all over the place. Have it in a single place and it will really help you to think it through. Again, have a single source of truth. It helps. Because it ultimately allows you to have a single focus on your day, because you don't think of those extra things. You have one task at hand, and that's what you're going to focus on. And if you want to hear more and learn more, this is another great book to read. So, about the emotions, that's another one. This is Jeremy Ashkenas posted this recently, in October actually. And I had to include this because it's just awful. He's basically enjoying the sun, and then there is this comment. By the way, Jeremy Ashkenas is the guy behind like CoffeeScript, _JS, and a bunch of other ones. And there is this lovely comment left by someone in the social media. Don't be that person. Don't be just mean and say this kind of stuff. I mean, kind of funny at some perspective, but it's awful to say. Always focus just on the positive side of things. Really, there is never a reason to be rude. Especially, I live in Canada, so I have like an extra push for that approach, but never be rude. There is a thing called art of unsent letters. Abraham Lincoln been known for those angry letters. He basically used to write a letter to someone where he was very angry, but he would never send those letters. He would put it in his drawer and never ever sends them. We actually have them now, because again, he never sent them. It really helps you to calm down, actually. Just write a letter, angry letter, don't send it, leave it as a draft. The worst thing you can do also is like send to all, reply all. That's also not the best thing, so be careful what you write. And again, sometimes focusing on improvements, how to make this better, it's not the best way to go. Think of what actually went well. Start with focusing on success of your product. Don't just think about how to improve all the time. And be proactive with your feedback. Find a junior developer. Tell them they are great. I still remember the architect who told me some positive feedback. It really changes your perspective. You will remember it forever. And won't you want someone to remember your face and you remember your name, that person told me blah, and now I remember and my life changed. Imagine you've changed this person's whole trajectory. You will have a good feeling, and again, you kind of spread the positivity. In talk suggestion, there is a person called Brad Cannon. He talked about kindness in open source, and he had a changelog episode about that. So if you want to hear more, he had a good overview. He's also from Canada. He lives in Vancouver as well. So, solitude-wise, that's actually important. Find quiet moments. If you travel, try to take off your headphones every once in a while. Listen to the nature. Flow therapy is great. People panic sometimes. It's basically a sleep deprivation capsule where it's quiet and it's like it's silent. You basically float on the salt water, no light whatsoever. People freak out, that's true. But it's great. It really keeps you like chill and relax every so often. And it helps you to learn about yourself a little bit. Because, I mean, if you learn about yourself, you can actually be more positive and nicer person because people will want to learn about you. If you don't want to know you, who will? And it helps you to have a clear judgments. Because again, everything comes from within how you treat people, most likely connected to what you think about yourselves. So, meditation-wise, that's as important as anything else when it comes to stress. There are a couple of types of meditation. There is unguided meditation. That might be somewhat advanced to begin with. I wouldn't recommend that. But guided meditation, there are lots of applications these days that will help you to actually get started with that. Active meditation is when you exercise. It really helps you because if you go for a run, you're tired, you have nothing to think about. The meditation is basically the best because meditation keeps telling you, and mindfulness overall, is be in the moment. When you ran, whatever, 15, 20 kilometers, you're so in the moment because you're basically so tired. So active meditation is actually a thing. And consistency is the key. Tony Robinson, if you know, it's basically that motivational speaker, too intense for me, honestly. But he says, if you can't find 10 minutes for yourselves, you have no life. Basically, find 10 minutes for morning meditation. Everyone can find those 10 minutes, whatever your complaints might be. If you need help getting started, there are a bunch of applications. Headspace is my favorite. It really helps you get started, especially it has a free sessions at the beginning, so you can easily find how to keep going. Relax Meditation is another app, and Calm is like, it's been actually increasing in popularity these days. If you're skeptical of meditation because it might be connected to some religious beliefs, don't be. There is a great book, 10% Happier by Dan Harris. He's in no way religious. He talked about his finding and success with meditation. Read it if you need more convincing. So here we can go to the last part of work stress and how to deal with it. There's so much to talk, I had to cut a lot, but let's focus on the 4 main parts. Office environment, communication, distractions, and project planning. The office environments, the tricky one. So, office and you. Open office is the horrible, horrible thing, is a nightmare. There is a reason why so many people book rooms permanently and make it their offices. And it doesn't work. Open office, I've seen so many articles these days, it's a nightmare. So, office perks is usually nothing more than just office bribes. It's basically people try to get you, lunches, so you basically eat at work all the time, you stay there a lot, you have no work-life balance, it's always work. You can have fun in the office, don't get me wrong, but still you have to keep that separated as much as you can. It's a bribe. They're bribing you for your time to get basically get the value out of you. There is a reason why work on a plane is a thing. You sometimes get, oh, I got so much done while I was flying because I had no internet connection, I had no distraction, I had no one around me. And again, remember the tweet from the very beginning, work is just work. So companies that push, companies that push for we are the family, it's not the best message, I would say. So really, work is just work. It's all business, that it's nothing more than that. And think about remote work if office really, you struggle with that, especially the open office. Communication is another thing. Always try to remove synchronous communication wherever possible and go for asynchronous communication. There is no reason, some people expect reach time be the same as response time. They try to ping you on a HipChat or Slack, or HipChat is that, on Slack, and expect you to reply right away. That expectation shouldn't be there. You have to establish those expectations, saying, I will get back to you. But make sure you're being honest to that. Don't just ignore them completely. Get back to them. But don't reply right away either. Implement those rules. And sometimes put names to faces. Put a proper avatar with your face that people can actually, people dehumanize each other every so often when they don't see you. Put your avatar and your real face, your real photo, helps them to see you as a human, actually. So, and be more kind of empathetic. Distractions. Office is full of distractions, as we all know. Hence, I mentioned the open office. So, distraction-wise, mobile devices Noise control is something we're going to chat on, setting up the boundaries, and getting into the zone. So the mobile devices is a big thing, right? Before, my phone looked like this. It was awful. Except I didn't have a Snapchat and Tumblr, but it was similar to this. I had, like, again, so many pop-ups and like red bubbles and stuff. It was irritating. It's been shown it actually causes anxiety to some extent. But what doesn't, right? Anyways, now my phone looks like this. I have no notifications. I have things arranged in a nice order. The most important thing is that my messaging apps that I tend to check, like Twitter and email, they are not on the main screen. They're on a second screen. Even that them being on the second screen makes a huge difference because people are inherently lazy. You don't want to go to the second screen. So try to push it to the next, not your main homepage. With mobile devices, try to arrange your apps, as I've said. Disable all notifications. There being like that anti-pattern, UX anti-patterns, and don't be that person who implements it, where every time you open an app, it shows you, please enable notification to stay in touch. Those are just the worst. Don't be that person. Don't even, if someone tells you to implement it, just throw it away and say, no, I'm quitting next day. So really, that's the worst thing to do. Always have do not disturb mode. I have no idea who calls these days. The only people who call me in Canada now is there is a warrant because you're tax evading. It's like or you won like a trip to Hawaii. Only those people who call me. I never get a proper call anymore. And put your phone away. That's actually funny. If you put your phone away as farther than your arm length, it will make a huge difference. As I said, we are lazy. If you were to put phone not like an arm length, but like a little bit further, I would never stand up even for that like half a meter. And it's a real thing. You would see the difference. It actually works. Noise control-wise, meaningless noise has been shown to have a success and focus. The reason why we go to Starbucks sometimes, while it's still noisy, is because that noise makes no sense for us, has no meaning. Nobody taps you on the shoulder and asks you a question anymore. It's actually quite nice. Have a sound support of some sort. That's why I recommend a couple of applications, like Brain FM that I've mentioned before. It's a great app to basically have a sound with no words whatsoever. It helps you to focus, helps you to sleep, whatever you do. Spotify has nice playlists as well, and My Noise is another like option if you do like white noise machine, which I can never get used to, but some people do. Noise cancellation. I'm not a huge fan of like earplugs are nice. I sleep in them. That's great. Earmuffs, I find the best, honestly. Like you saw the picture of me. I have like earmuffs. There is a link here, article called "Poor Man's Boss." The guy basically found those construction earmuffs. You can connect the sound to them, so you don't have to pay like $300 for a Boss. You can just buy these for like $70 and have a proper noise cancellation. Or you can actually buy Boss if you want to. But they broke for me, and I would never forget that. And have library rules in your team. Library rules is basically keep quiet. Don't talk all the time. Go into the room. And always asynchronous ping people. Don't just approach them and tap on the shoulder. Ping them. Can we chat? Then you go and chat. Don't just go to them and disturb them. Establish office hours. If you're an expert, people are going to keep coming to you. Have an office hours every week, like 5 to 9, whatever. Sorry, this is crazy. 1 to 5, you can ping me, I will answer your questions once a week or something. If you're an expert, have those office hours. But make sure you discuss these rules. Don't just set them in your head. Discuss it as a team. Have expectations. That's the way to success. And last thing I'll talk about today is the project planning, how it affects you. People who think long-hanging fruits are the easiest thing to implement are the worst. When they say, oh, it's long-hanging fruit, let's just implement, how much time will it take? It will take longer than you think. We have a hard time planning for things we know about. Things that we haven't done because they're long-hanging, it's not going to make it better. It's going to be even more complex. That's why dog fooding is so important. That's long-hanging fruit. You might have never done it, but if you've used other products in that area, you might have a brief idea of the area you're working in. Having domain knowledge helps you. Parkinson's law is a thing here because it's basically, Parkinson's law says, what is it? Task expands as the time allows it. Basically, the more time you have, the more work you try to fit into this. That's why people who procrastinate constantly can actually use this as an argument. Oh, I procrastinate because Parkinson's law. Because if you have like very little time to finish something, you will basically cut all the fat and you will do only the essential work. You can argue that way, but you have to be cautious of that law. And the Conway's law, your organization will basically be represented in your architecture. Discuss and have the team in a proper hierarchy and the way that you have a proper communication, proper rules. Otherwise, your app or whatever you're working on will be all over the place. If you need to know more, DHH wrote this book. If you know who DHH is, the guy, Ruby on Rails and stuff. He wrote this great book with another co-author. Read more about this. So, we've talked about a lot of things, and as I said, hopefully you find at least one of these areas interesting to you. So, last thing I want to mention, if there are any gotchas, I will say yes, there are quite a few. There is a recipe for a failure for anyone. If you're being dogmatic on best practices, it would not work for you. You have to be just work in moderation and use something that will be applicable to you. Don't jump into things too fast. Everyone can technically run a marathon, but you would be recovering for months, for weeks, so be cautious of that. Don't jump into this way too fast. And you have to establish a goal. It really helps. And don't fight your nature. Use what I've said, like habit loops, or you establish routines and just emphasize and improve them. And if you need more, there is another great book on that. Very last thing I have to say. So much information, and why do you even need to listen to me in the first place? Who do you even trust? Find a specialist. If you Google something like, are walnuts healthy for you? Always add a person you trust. Ben Greenfield is someone I always use in my search results because I will then be able to find information I need. Talk to the professional. Again, don't just jump into this. Talk to the doctor, talk to the physician. Maybe you have a disbalance in your vitamins or your health, or talk to a specialist first. Don't just do it out of nowhere because I said so. Definitely don't do that. And experiment. It always helps. Just try paleo, try keto, whatever works for you. Don't just listen to the latest fad. Try it out. And share your experience with the community. Community really works. So call for action for you all. Find the purpose, find the goal, find your motivator. Inspire other people. I was lucky enough to have a colleague of mine who inspired me to change my routines, really helped me. And enjoy life. Work is just work, but you will never change. So improve your life, improve your health, live for your family. So yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you.
This conference has been gradually getting better for me. The quality of the lineup is usually really, really good, and this is something I'm really saying thumbs up.
They're really trying to get speakers here that are pushing to the future of web technologies.
I just feel like it's a very community-driven conference. It also has a lot of quality, and people are just nice. Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is AgentConf in Dornbirn.
Amazing venue. Austria is beautiful. Meeting all of the people in the community and getting to go and hang out and ski.